Welcome to Pagan Coffee Talk. Here are your hosts, Oswin and Lord Knight. Today, let's talk about male mysteries.
Okay.
Now, this is a thing. We've heard it said there are no male mysteries.
We have heard that.
We have heard that women should be privy to male mysteries.
But we're not supposed to be privy to theirs.
Right.
But we are.
So, right.
I mean, I hate to be that way. The majority of men know the female, some of the mysteries.
Some of them, yeah.
You know, I'm sure it wouldn't be hard to piece the rest of them together.
I honestly believe that there are quite a few of the male mysteries that women already know.
Oh, I'm almost guaranteed that.
You know,
I can guarantee that because
and I don't think these mysteries are really anything secretive. They're not really mysteries per se.
No, and I want to say sometimes the best way to look at them is they're not mysteries. They're just stuff mom wouldn't let you do.
Right. Or if you had a single parent who was a mother.
No. I mean that whole entire thing of the difference between when dad's watching you and mom's watching you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. And dad lets you get away with all sorts of stuff.
Right. That'd be like, it'll be all right.
That your mom would never allowed you to do.
Right.
I know. Go ahead. Jump off the damn roof. Let's see how well that's going to go. Here, hold this umbrella.
Right. See how far you get.
Yeah. I think those are the male mysteries.
Okay.
And that's why people think there aren't male mysteries. Because they are mysteries of action, of doing.
It's basically growing up and learning to be a guy.
Right. I mean, again, if you think about it this way, and me and Lady Keegan had a conversation about this, and when she was sitting there one day complaining about she was starting her monthly and she was getting that boost of testosterone. And she was saying something about that, about how aggressive and stuff she felt during all of this. And I'm like, well, that's that shot of testosterone you're getting, which starts your cycle.
Hmm.
And she's like, well, yeah. I was just like, yeah, that's like a guy on a daily basis.
Right.
And she's like, so one of the mysteries there is y'all learning how to control or to aim or to push that aggression in more other ways than just lashing out.
Right.
It's not something you're told. You're just, I don't know how to put that.
My dad was...
Your dad would show you or tell you how to do it by doing it, not by being it, not by telling you.
Right. There wasn't anything that he could really... Well, I mean, there was things I feel that he could have told me, but he didn't. Instead, he was the example.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, my dad taught me a lot of things about, like, through his actions about the whole entire thing of how a male's pride can sometimes be more detrimental to them.
Right.
Because, I mean, I remember being a kid, teenager and stuff, and watching him, like, fall into a hole and actually really hurt himself.
Right.
And him just sitting there going, I'm fine. Go inside.
Right.
I mean, again, it wasn't anything else. It was a pride thing.
Right. It's yeah.
Yeah. And again, there's a difference there, by his actions. And don't get me wrong, I love my dad to death, and he's a wonderful man. But this was the lesson that he taught me by showing it.
Right.
That sometimes, guys' prides can get into their own way. And we got to be aware of that. It's one thing, to rub dirt into it and walk it off. And then there's a bone sticking out of there. Yeah, you might need to go to the hospital.
Right.
No, it'd be all right. It's just a flesh wound.
Right. Here, we'll wrap it up and it'll be all right.
Yeah, the whole Mighty Python. It's just a flesh wound. Arms off. I mean, I think these are the male mysteries. And this is why a lot of people don't think there are male mysteries.
Right.
Because they're not easily translated. Hence the reason I think, like, the Boy Scouts was a really good idea. And I think the Boy Scouts would have been better if it was more of an encouragement of father and son versus you with the other boys.
And a scout leader.
And just a scout leader.
Right.
And I'm not saying that against the scout leader. I'm just saying, to me, it seems like that should have been more of a function to bond father and son together by doing these activities with other fathers and sons. I think Boy Scouts would have been a whole lot better than
Well, see, like, growing up, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and my dad and my mom both, we had an organization in our church called the Royal Ambassadors, or the RAs. And they were teachers in this organization. And they encouraged a lot of the fathers. The RAs it was for boys.
Right.
You know, we had our GAs, or Girls in Action. That was for the girls. But both organizations encouraged the parents to get involved.
Yeah.
And so therefore, like when the boys would go camping or whatever, it was encouraged that the fathers come.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we went out to go do things for people who weren't able to do things, like cleaning up their yards and stuff like that, the fathers, again, were encouraged to come along, spend time with their sons. Let's do some bonding, learn some lessons.
See, I really like this idea. We got a lot of guys out there right now, and I don't think they necessarily know how to be a dad, how to teach those lessons.
Right.
With the advancement of technology and stuff like that, how many people actually know how to actually start a fire by the whole rubbing two sticks together?
Right.
I mean, the fact is, this was a skill that all kids learned at some point. It's great for a boy's self-confidence and stuff to realize that they've went out, captured their food, put it on the table, prepped it, cooked it, and it was eating it.
Right.
You know, I can't explain to you what the male mysteries are there until you're a guy going through the process. Does that?
Yeah, it makes sense.
No, we're not going to see it like women. You know, women aren't going to act like men, but I believe the sexes need the time to be themselves.
Right. There are things unique to both sexes.
Right.
That the other cannot experience.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some mysteries there, you know, like that dads can teach. And normally those things come along the lines of, you know, when you have that dream in the middle of the night and you go to your dad and things are a little messy.
Right.
Shaving. You know, I mean, why this was not originally a male mystery, it becomes a male mystery because the bond between father and son, showing him how to do this, what to do, and how to avoid the mistakes he made trying to learn maybe by himself.
Right.
You know, my dad didn't really teach me to shave. I sort of had to figure it out for myself, but...
Well, my dad didn't really teach me that either, but he did let me play with razors that didn't have a blade in it.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, I was kind of gaining some knowledge of what to do and how to travel the blade in certain directions.
Well, again, I'm not kicking my dad because my dad, as long as I can remember, my dad's always used an electric razor.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He's never used a regular...
Right, like a razor.
A razor, and did it wet. So he never actually showed me or anything. So I sort of had to, figure it out because it's not what he did.
Right.
And I did the same thing for years. I just used an electric razor because that's what my dad did.
Right.
You know, I mean, the fact that it tore my face up all like... I didn't like, but, you know,
right.
This requires no instructions on how to do. You just place and rub on face.
Right. I don't know. I tried an electric razor and I felt like it was just pulling the fuck out of all the hairs, and I couldn't deal with it. Mm. But I grew up shaving. So.
Yeah. Again, this is them things that boys need to learn. They need to spend time with their dads.
I think so, yeah.
They need to spend time. They need to spend time with their dad around other men. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's important because there are other lessons that can be gleaned, and it goes beyond just, you know, quote unquote, how to be a man.
Well, I mean, I remember growing up and my dad taking me fishing with his buddies.
Right.
So I got to learn how to be a guy watching my dad interact with other guys,
right,
which taught me how to interact with other guys.
Exactly.
To a certain, how far you can push it or not.
Right.
Yeah.
it also goes to how to treat your partner, how to treat your wife, your husband, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend.
Right. How to treat your family. And when you need to be that guy that stands in the way so everybody else can be safe.
Right. And sometimes it's something as simple as, son, when you're walking with your girlfriend down the sidewalk, you make sure you are on the side of the traffic.
Right. I know a lot of people would look at you going, what's the point on that? But
well, it's a protection thing.
It's a protection thing. If a car was going to hit you, I could push you out of the way and I'd get hit, not you.
Right.
And again, here's a mindset of guys. We're taught, I don't want to say taught, but somehow in the back of our mind, I think we're programmed to self-sacrifice.
Yeah, I think so.
No, not all men do, but the majority. I think when it comes down to it, even the most timid guy would be that guy that would stand up for his girl or his family and stand in the way, knowing that the people are going to give his family more of a time to either get away or escape or live just a little bit longer.
Right.
I don't think that's a lesson that we're taught by our fathers. I think it's something innate.
Yeah, I think that's something that's more like an instinct.
What I think our fathers and other men teach us on this is how to accept that about ourselves.
Good point.
That whole entire concept of a brave man does something in spite of his fear.
Right.
That we do it because we are afraid of it. You know,
facing those fears head on.
Head on.
Yeah.
And not shying away from them. Because nobody's going to coat things over. Nobody's going to make anything easy for you.
No spoonful of sugar here. I mean.
And it's not, I'm big, bad, and tough. It's just, I'm doing what's needed to be done.
Right. It needs to be done. It's necessary. So this is what I have to do.
I know for a fact, and I've driven you up the wall because I have this type of attitude and stuff like that. And I remember many a times was outside and splitting a couple of cords of wood, and you sitting there getting mad because I'm just getting too old to do this.
Right.
And you're like, no, you got to stop. No, you got to stop. Again, that male pride coming in there, which...
Of course it is, yeah.
But again, this male pride to a certain extent is also helpful when we're dealing in the concept of sacrificing ourselves for others.
Well, yeah. I'm not saying pride's a bad thing. It can be, just like anything else, but...
When it gets into your way of just being stupidity, it's a bad thing.
Right.
Well, it's just like anything else we talked about moderation.
Right.
Of all things. Is the best course.
Right.
I think. I could be wrong there.
Right. And I think it's okay to be stupid every once in a while, but just don't be, really stupid. Don't go off and
every boy in
try
their
to cut your hand
every
off
boy
with
in
a
their
chainsaw.
life should say at least 5 times, "Hey guys, watch this."
Right? Look, Ma, no hands. Scare the piss out of your mother in the process. What? What are you doing? Stop.
Wait a minute. Remember, I was the one where my mother looked at my friends and went, "If he jumped off a bridge, would y'all?"
Right. Because you were the instigator. Yes, I know.
Didn't instigate. I encouraged. I motivated.
Whatever. Sure you did.
I think I'm about out of coffee on this.
All right, so let's talk about something else. Folk magic equals traditionalist.
No, it don't.
Because we've been hearing this a lot lately.
We have.
That being a traditional witch means that you deal with folk magic.
That is a lie. Are there traditionalists who follow and study folk magic and folklore and all that? Yes.
Sure, yes.
Well, this is more about what makes a traditionalist. And what makes a traditionalist is that you were trained and initiated into craft.
Right.
Folk magic can become a religion and can become a member of craft. It's already happened before.
Yeah.
With voodoo. Because it was a mixture of Catholicism and African ritual practices. And that's it.
Right.
That's folk magic. Just like up here in North Carolina, North and South Carolina, and all up near the Blue Ridge Parkway, and all that, where we had the people from Highland of Scotland and Southern Baptists coming together.
Right.
They created what is known as nowadays is known as granny magic. All right, this is where we get the Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies character. This is what she is.
Right.
All right, this doctor / healer / brewery maker / cook, and this is what a granny witch is.
Right.
This is folk magic. All right, and I'm sorry if you lived in Ireland and stuff like that, and Scotland and all that. That's your folk magic. Am I making any sense here?
Yeah.
This is not a stepping stone to being a traditionalist. What separates traditionalists from all the other ones are we are initiated. And we're not talking about self-initiations, which ain't real. All right? I don't care if they videotape them or not. They're not real.
All right. Well, what about you said what makes us a traditionalist is that we are initiated.
Right.
What about those family folk traditions, and I use the words folk traditions
I'm sorry.
loosely, where they do actually initiate their children into their practice?
And that's a family tradition, and I wouldn't want to step into that hornet's nest to save my life.
But they're initiated.
They're initiated, but that's normally within the family itself. It's never going to grow past it.
So, but by that definition, can't they call themselves a traditionalist?
Well, I mean, it's just like I said, I'm not saying that traditionalists don't study or practice certain folk medicine stuff. It's just not required to be a traditionalist. Did that make sense?
A little bit, but I'm still back to, if you've got people who are practicing folk magic.
Okay, these people that you hear talk about folk magic and stuff like that.
Right.
They talk about Celtic myths and stuff like that.
Right.
You never hear them talk about damn Johnny Appleseed.
No.
Or Babe, the Big Blue Ox, and Paul Bunyan and all that.
No.
If you're going to do fucking magic, let's start hearing you talk about these of the land that you live on. If you're going to get that specific, use the ones from your land.
Okay.
And again, this is an initiated tradition that we are in. You come in, you study, you're trained to understand certain things, and then you're initiated. Then you start your training again for second degree, and you're initiated. Then the same thing happens again at third. You're initiated.
So
all right?
That's what makes a traditionalist.
That's what makes us traditionalists. Now, if you're just part of a family and they're doing some type of initiation, I can't sit there and say if it's a pagan thing or if it's that hillbilly initiation type thing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Where it becomes more like a rite of passage?
Where it's more of a rite of passage versus today I am a man because I went through, because my uncles took me out to the woods and left me somewhere drunk for 3 days.
Right, and told me to find my way home.
And told me to find my way home. This to me has nothing to do with craft. This has to do with the social of the family. Does that make sense?
Okay.
The social working of the family. This initiation is not an initiation technically into craft. This is an initiation into their family.
Okay.
This is where this difference is between these initiations.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to get to, because I know it's a hard topic to.
It is, and I know I have to go all the way out to limbo to come all the way back.
Right.
I don't know how else to explain it.
Right, because I'm sure some people were like, what's that got to do with anything?
Well, and see, here's what makes it harder is that me and you both know that I have members in my family who live this type of lifestyle that we're trying to vaguely go around. And these people only come out of the hills and the mountains once a year to buy sugar, corn, and some other things and pick up some odds and ends and go back.
Right.
And you don't hear from them again for another year. These types of family, they're very close-knit. We're not talking about inbreeding, but they're very close-knit, and you do not want to go on their property without permission.
Right.
Or without them being knowing or you being related to them. You'll get shot, and they won't find the body.
Right.
Secrets in the sauce. That lifestyle, that right there is completely different than craft. because that initiation is an initiation into the family.
Okay.
All right. Or a coming of age type of initiation that, from this point on, we're going to look at you either as a man or a fully grown woman and treat you as such. So what you're talking about is more of a rite of passage versus an initiation.
Well, I mean, I was just curious because I know there's going to be
Somebody.
Well,
and
and we did have somebody contact us via email who was kind of in that same situation where they practiced with their family.
Right.
And that's what they were initiated into.
Well, see, now again, this might only be our temple, but we tend to want to stay away from family members initiating other family members.
Right, but I mean, if it's a family practice,
right? I'm not going to say anything because it's a family practice.
But does that make them traditionalists?
I guess it really depends on if they're like following the ethics and morals and the laws. And am I making sense there?
Yeah.
Which a lot of these families, like you're talking about, don't do. They just have their own way of doing things, and that's just it.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, there are more things behind that, but the main thing there is it is an initiation. And again, it's not a self-initiation. I want to make sure we have that distinguished.
Right.
So that way if you got somebody who's self-initiated going, well, I practice folk magic and I'm self-initiated, so I'm a traditionalist. No, you're not.
Right.
There's a little bit more to it than that. Like I said, following the laws, following the ethics and morals, and having them oaths.
Right.
Because in these family things, your oaths are normally taken to the family. In craft, our oaths are taken to craft itself.
Right.
Not necessarily the tradition altogether. So, I mean, otherwise, this is folk magic. And I don't see how in the world people are calling that traditionalist.
All right.
I mean, in a certain extent, I understand that it's traditional magic and traditional folklore and all this stuff. Yes. But it's not traditional craft. And like I said, most of these people that I see online claiming this, especially in the U.S., they're not using U.S. mythology.
No, they're not.
They're either using Norse or whatever. So again, you're lying out your ass because that's not the folk magic of the land that you live in.
Right.
And I think you should start using that if you're going to call yourself, a folk magic here in the United States. You need to use our legends and myths.
Right. I mean, it wasn't, I guess, I don't know. It was earlier this year that I actually read a book on Appalachian magic, folk magic.
Uh-huh.
And their biggest thing was, if you're going to practice Appalachian folk magic, you need to go with the myths and legends and the lore of the land on which you reside.
Right. So, I mean, are these people really what in the world they say they are if they're following these myths? Well, I'm from that part. You haven't been from that part in generations.
Right. It's I don't think I could practice Appalachian folk magic, but I could practice some type of folk magic in the area in which I grew up.
But see, I don't know which is worse. These people actually fooling themselves into thinking this, right?
Yeah.
Or the fact is that they actually think this. I don't know which is worse, that they actually practice it or they think this is what in the world this is. Do you see what I'm saying?
Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Exactly.
I mean, how can you really say?
I mean, but again, you see these folk magic and stuff, and you see them online, and I don't see any of them doing anything folksy.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against folk magic. Folk magic, I grew up with some folk magic. It's some powerful stuff.
Yeah,
it works.
Well, I mean,
but
I was raised on it too. I mean, my grandma came from those regions and knew some of that granny stuff.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, and I'm sorry, but you're going to call it folk magic, but one of the remedies for getting a burn out, for talking the heat out of burns, is doing nothing more than the Lord's Prayer while blowing a cross on the damn thing.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, that's craft, all right there. I mean, yeah. completely from a different religion craft.
That's a totally different topic, but yeah, and a lot of the Appalachian folk magic stuff is based in Christianity.
But that's my point. This is what folk magic is. Folk magic is the blending of two different cultures to make a new culture.
Right.
That's folk magic.
Yeah.
Traditional magic is a more set up course, or what am I trying to think of? More organized than folklore, because a lot of folklore I knew growing up, some of it never made any sense.
Right.
Because one would tell you to do. Because one of the folklores I remember growing up with, where we live, was if you pull a cat alive, and the first bone that comes up, you take to a crossroads, hold your hands above your head, and say, everything between my hands and my feet I give to the devil. You suddenly supposed to become a witch.
Right.
With powers in the whole 9 yards.
Right.
I don't see too many people doing that shit either.
Mm-mm.
You know, the first person to do it, I'm going to say, you're a little nuts to pull a cat alive. I'm just...
Right.
So, I mean, how much of this folklore are you following? How much of it aren't you following? Are you only following the ones that you like? Are you cherry picking?
Right, we're back to, if you're going to follow that, you need to follow it.
Right. Don't sit there and tell me about your Fey wand when you're claiming to be a folk magic and you're living in the United States, and you don't sit there and talk about Johnny Appleseed.
Right.
You're not doing folk magic. You're being a dick.
Right. Pretty much.
Maybe being a dick is too harsh of a word. You're being not quite honest with yourself, I guess would be the way to put that. And I don't know how to tell people what a traditionalist is without starting to spill some mysteries. But I mean, there are certain sets of rules and ethics and stuff and oaths and stuff that we take to make us a traditionalist. Like one of the oaths that we take is that if we reveal any of our mysteries to anyone outside of teaching and prepared and correctly done, that we lose our chances of reincarnation. All our tools and powers will turn against us, and we just become complete idiots.
Right.
So, yeah, I think I'm done. I'm out of coffee.
Thanks for listening. Join us next week for another episode. Pagan Coffee Talk is brought to you by Life Temple and Seminary. Please visit us at lifetempleseminary.org for more information, as well as links to our social media: Facebook, Discord, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit.
We travel down this trodden path, a maze of stone and mire. Just hold my hand as we pass by a sea of blazing pyres. And so it is the end of our days, so walk with me till morning breaks. And so it is the end of our days, so walk with me till morning